From the forges of creation to the tables of imagination, this is Behind the Chaos, and I am your host, Javier. Welcome to episode 2, where we're going to talk about a little bit of what we started with in terms of equipment and some of the challenges that we went through, as well as how we evolved to how we run the business today. So let's rewind a little bit back to the beginning when we first got our first printer, right? So this was after some discussions with my business partner at the time. And after making a budget, after seeing and doing a little bit of research as to what was out there and what we needed to just get the ball rolling, right? We landed on 2 printers, right? We were debating in between brands of Elegoo or Anycubic. We saw that the Anycubic Photon SE was just a better fit for us. We had more accessibility of getting the resin. We had more resins to kind of like try on at the time. Their technology was slightly more advanced at the time, and then we just kind of opted in for that. Was that our best decision? I think in hindsight, it probably wasn't. We did learn a lot based on that. And I'll get into a little bit later in the episode on how we phased out of that machine, although we did kind of break it once or twice. So we'll see how, we're going to tell you how you can avoid those mistakes and maybe not break your machine within the first 2 months that you had it. So that gave us a real nice clue that, it wasn't just going to be plug and play or just, press a button, print, and all your problems go away and you can now have a legitimate business and just kind of keep on going. We realized that there's a certain technique, there's a certain science to it, and that was basically straight off the bat from our first print. We tried printing some army men. We had them like 90 degrees on the build plate, and they ended up printing just not very nicely. You could hear the resin printer almost like as the film would kind of pop up as all the layers were coming down, right? We later learned that you had to kind of position your miniatures preferably at a 45-degree angle. That mistake came in about a month and a half after we got our first printer, and it cost us dearly. What happened was that we began doing only prints that were basically one model at a time, and when we went up and started to do 6-7 models at a time, which is what we could have fit in that 7-inch build plate, I believe it was, the pressure of the entire kind of plate popping up not only broke the film or the FEP film that are on resin printers, it actually lifted the screen off, and it just shattered it completely. So just that amount of vacuum pressure that it created just obliterated our first printer within the first 2 months. It's things that happen, right? I think we just didn't do our research at the time. So one advice from us to you guys, if you're looking into getting into 3D printing, albeit right now in 2025 it's a little bit more different, there's a lot of more technology around it, is do your research. Watch a couple of YouTube videos, see what people are doing, and try to understand really what the science about it is and what the engineering behind it is, right? Once we understood that laying objects at a 45-degree angle created less of a vacuum suction or a vacuum force on the build plate once it's lifting off from the screen, we then later understood that, well, that's going to be good for the machine, how long it lives, and for our prints, right? It's going to create a lot less chances for it to come and fail. I'm sad to say, or I'm ashamed to say, that wasn't the only time that happened. we actually then, decided to print a big, baddie. I think it was like a Kraken. And a similar thing happened, right? We had not learned about drainage holes and what the benefits of those were. And again, we replaced the screen maybe a month, 2 months later, once we got a really exciting project to print like a behemoth of a monster. Um, we did the whole thing solid in one shot, and then there were layers that were just the entirety of the whole plate. And same as before, the vacuum pressure just completely popped that out, and one, made a mess, and then two, just completely cracked the screen. Once we figured it out, we noticed that thankfully the resin didn't go into the machine, so the cost of our repairs were only 2 LCD screens for the both instances that happened. But I guess what I'm trying to say here is that there is a learning curve, right? Like I think a lot of videos and a lot of marketing out there kind of nowadays say, oh, it's very much print and play, just click the button and you go right ahead. And I do say that technology has come a long way. Now they have build plates that basically do that rotation of 45 degrees instead of going a full length up and down, which reduces that vacuum pressure, right, and increases the chances of a successful print. We started with that, and we evolved. We evolved into better machines as better technology came out, and that gave us possibilities to grow our business in different ways. So let's talk about quickly on how growing your business or making certain business decisions really affects your equipment. At the beginning, me and Jeff wanted to do miniatures, right? Our whole reason why we named ourselves Studios and Chaotic Studios was because we had the idea of making our own designs and making our own miniatures and learning how to print them and successfully print them and then sell them. So the big focus of our business was going to be initially resin 3D printing. As we evolved as a business, we first said, okay, let's go all in on this. So throughout the first 6 to 7 months of the business, we really focused on having those models, right? So the 3 things that we did was we first learned how to design so that we could create kind of like our own models and see what, the pushing the boundaries of the printer could be while learning how to do that. The second was hire designers, right? We had gotten some custom jobs that were out of our depth, right? As a business, you take them on and you solve the problem and see how you can outsource it. So we ended up hiring some friends to make some of the designs that were more of a mechanical application, but still 3D printed them in resin, which I know wasn't that popular at the moment since most parts are printed in FDM. Then we said, okay, well, we're gonna just hire regular STL files from like my manufacturer, right? So that we can broaden our library. So as we got more and more into that, we started kind of going in the direction of we need more output. We need to increase our capacity because we're not keeping up, right? Like printing a big monster took 5 days because you would set one print, it would take 6 hours, then you would go to sleep or go to work, then come back 8 hours later, put another one for 6 hours, get up early, and then put another one for 6 hours, and then you would have half a behemoth or half a monster. It wasn't something that was sustainable or scalable. So we upgraded to the Photon Max, I believe, or Max 2 Max. I don't quite remember anymore. We don't have that one anymore. But it basically brought a 10-inch build plate. For us, that was huge because, again, we moved into more medium-sized and bigger projects with a lot more easiness and smoothness and efficiency. So at that time, we had already kind of learned a couple of things, right? We learned about the degrees of where things had to go and how to kind of better position them. We learned about drainage holes and what vacuum pressure was. And then we also learned about, how to properly put those drainage holes, where to put them, and how to make them effectively. Now, before we learned about drainage holes, we did have another lesson, which was that resin miniatures, when you hollow them out, explode if you don't have anywhere to release some of that material that has a built up there. So that was a fun lesson that we might get into in a future episode of how we found that out and how we quickly then fixed it. But having said that, upgrading your equipment on the one hand was important to us because of output. We also had to upgrade our digital tools. Our digital tools were basically at the time slicers, right? So the photon slicer was actually pretty good. At the time, Lychee's slicer was really, really popular, and it was because they had a really neat auto feature for supports. Now, if you guys have gone into resin printing, supports is basically the pillar of your success when it comes to that. And back in the day, the auto features were good, but not nearly as good as they are today. So a lot of the time when you were finding models online or you were creating your own, the support structures were actually the most time-consuming endeavor out of that, right? So we had to learn how to go through that, right? So at the very first, we used the photon slicer. After we started having print fail after print fail after print fail because the supports just were not good enough, and no matter how we kind of tried, that skill set we just didn't quite have just yet, we moved on to Lychee Slicer. Lychee Slicer again had that auto one, which was fantastic for its time. So then we started using that more and more, and then we saw great success with it. The auto feature worked excellent, and then as kind of time went by, we started to watch more and more YouTube videos about, again, the science of it all and what you needed to support for what reasons, and how to make them thick, how to make them small, how to, what the length of that connection between the body of your miniature and the body of the support had to be, so that it wouldn't leave as much residue and it would make it better for your cleaning portion of it. So upgrading as you go, even in your software, is very, very important. Now, going back to how we upgraded our business, or how we kind of evolved as a business, which I think is going to be very important in this channel, we're going to be talking about a lot of what we did as a business to kind of keep growing and to kind of, adapt to what we saw our customers want, and basically what just did not work. There came a time where we were getting more and more requests about if we did FDM printing, and it was more for parts, nothing fantasy related, or kind of what we had initially kind of sought out for. But regardless, we were getting kind of these requests more by friends or by word of mouth customers saying, well, I want kind of like a big terrain piece, or like a building, or I want to bring a school model of a helicopter to school, and stuff like that, right? So we decided, okay, it's about time we kind of invest into an FDM printer. And that was really, really neat, because at the time, so we learned how to sculpt, basically. I wouldn't say that, I learned specifically how to design per se. I think mechanical design is a different beast on its own. But I learned how to sculpt, like I mentioned in our first episode. So, I was trying sculpting methods for FDM printing, and they just didn't really work, right? For FDM printing and for parts, you really want that precision, you really want those tolerances, and they just were not compatible. So when we decided to do our FDM printing, we said, okay, Anycubic has been good for us, and Anycubic has been great, so we're going to give Anycubic the chance to kind of come along and do their thing, right? And for us, that was when they just announced the release of their Cobra Color, I think it was called, which was kind of a first step for them into multi-filament or multicolor printing. Boy, was that a bad decision. At the time, Bamboo Labs had already been established. It was surging as the company that, you know, made 3D printing accessible, affordable, easy for just about anybody, right? So those Ender 3 nightmares and all of the like Cobras and initial kind of FDM 3D printers that you would spend hours upon hours calibrating and recalibrating kind of ended. Bamboo made those all go away. Yet, you know, we had a successful year with the two resin printers with Anycubic, and we said, well, we're gonna trust them on the FDM, and like I said, boy, was that the wrong decision. For saving, I don't know, I'm gonna say $400 to $500. You know, we signed up for about 6 months of just complete tinkering, no good prints, spare parts had to be sent multiple times. And it was just, you know, I think as a business decision it was the wrong decision, but financially maybe at the time it was a good decision. So in hindsight, honestly, I think my advice would be go with something that is an industry standard. If you are not at the level to be able to buy, for example, a P1S because it's too expensive, you know, it's still, you know, close or more than $1,000, at least in Canadian dollars, go smaller, right? Get the A1, the A1 Mini, like whatever you can afford and whatever you can start with, just go and get started, right? For us, I think the idea and the trust that we had on the brand kind of skewed us, as well as the financial upgain, skewed us into making that decision, and you know, it was just a little too much problems. We couldn't return it, so we ended up kind of declaring a loss on that until we got our P1S. And we decided to basically repurpose it, give it to someone very, very cheap on Marketplace. But you know what? It was a little bit of a loss. And we learned a lot, right? We learned a lot. We basically got into now learning how 3D printing worked from a FDM perspective. We saw problems with calibration, with bed warping, with extrusion on, you know, how the nozzle extrudes and what each of the filaments had to do that. And we went through troubles of temperature, humidity, how filaments are kept, etc. Right? So there was so many problems all at the same time that we really quickly learned and tried to keep up with that learning curve. On top of all that, we were trying to learn how to 3D design, and yeah, you know, at the end of the day, we ended up switching big, right? So what I want to communicate with this, I guess, through this long story is that you will make mistakes in your business. As you're going through it, you will make these type of mistakes where, you know, you trust a brand, or you just are trying to get as much as you can from your money that, you know, you're pouring or investing into your business. And sometimes you fail, and that's okay. That's okay, because, like, again, you will have learnings embedded in that. And even though, you know, now we rarely have any bad prints, we learned through that process. Now when we do have to tinker with our bamboo, we know how to. We learned how the mechanics of it all is, right? Having said that, going back to the digital portion of it, we decided to, you know, again, use the bamboo software while still printing in the Anycubic Cobra, which ended up giving us a bunch of other issues until we kind of gave up and then went into the Anycubic one, and the issues didn't really resolve, so it had nothing to do with the digital portion of it. But the lesson there was basically try different things that are going on in the industry. Make sure that you're giving everything a fair shot, so that you keep on with the trends and you keep on seeing what, you know, competitive edge different companies have. To this day, I still know some people that use Orca Slicer as their preferred slicing tool because of the open framework, right? And they enjoy that. They know exactly how to use it, how to do it, and they know how to code for it. So to them, it's a big advantage. And if you can learn that, and if you can manipulate that to your advantage, that will definitely help you out in your 3D printing journey. All in all, what I'm trying to say to all my listeners out there is that you will have problems. Even with today's technology, tomorrow something better might come. And you will encounter kind of like a learning curve to everything. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to, change it up, right? Sometimes, like I said with the slicers, sometimes some features might be better on some others. Don't knock until you try it. If you hear a friend of yours doing slicing in some new interesting software, go for it. Try it out. See a couple YouTube videos and make sure that you're kind of joining in on that, right? Seeing it for yourself, making sure that you're enjoying the craft, right? If you're into 3D printing, I'm pretty sure you're much of a tinkerer or even an artist that wants to see their creations come to life. What I'm trying to say is, let's review today's episode. I know we went into a little bit of a tangent. First, don't be afraid to fail, right? Do your research, make sure that you're making an informed decision, but make sure that you're starting. Make sure that, you've accumulated enough data to go on and start wherever you can. Like I said before, if you can't buy a P1S, buy an AY Mini. If you can't buy, a 10-inch build plate resin printer, then go for the 6-inch, starter $200 one. There's no shame in that, create what you want to create, do what you want to do, and then go and build from that. Number 2 is, inevitably, you will need to upgrade, right? Your process, your machines, your digital tools. You will be constantly upgrading as a tinkerer in the 3D printing world, just as a hobbyist, or even as a business owner, right? Like, you will be faced with challenges that will force you to upgrade, right? In every sense of the word. Finally, again, learn from your failures. You will have some across your journey. Your failures will let you know that you're doing something right, which is you're taking risk, and you're taking risk for what hopefully is your passion or your vision, right? For us, is we took a risk in making dice cases and doing FDM printing, and it turned out to be one of our best products. Now we do much more in our filament printers than what we do in our resin printers. We still love both of them, so that's why we still have both of them, but both of them had a learning curve that we failed at, and we learned each and every step of the way, and it just made us stronger. It made us better. It made us into the business that we are today. So we are incredibly proud of that. Just like last session, or episode, if you like to say it, we will roll for insight. So the roll for insight, how it works is that we have a dice tower here. I'm going to roll a d20. And based on the roll, if it's a 1, we're going to say something or an advice, a piece of truth that might be a little bit harsh. It might be on the darker side. It might be something that can be hard to hear, or even uncomfortable, right? It might be something that, may come off as sour. If we roll more towards 20, then we're going to talk about something a little bit more uplifting, a little bit more from a happy perspective, and hopefully something that, regardless if it's the harsh truth, tough love, or the, warm advice, wise advice from us, I hope that you, regardless, take something away from it and give it a chance, right? So last session we rolled an 8, and it was all about, fixing your process before you fix your gears, right? Or your equipment. After giving it a thought over the last 2 weeks, it was part of the reason why we did this episode this time around. We wanted to make sure that you guys saw what kind of we went through, and there was a lot of steps in between that we didn't really get to hit. But there was a lot of steps in between where we know we upgraded or did different things with our resins, that we tested, breakages and just processing that we had to fix along the way without actually replacing the printer. Same as with our filament printer, right? Like, we tried everything under the sun to fix that Anycubic that just wouldn't budge. But we tried everything, right? And when we finalized and said, we give up, or we've, went through all of our potential fixes, then we changed our gear. Then we proceeded to something, quote unquote, better. So even if it's something that's not causing you problems, try to be more efficient. Try to have a more efficiency in your process flow and your workflow to take better utilization from your machines, right, and your equipment. So we're gonna get to rolling, and we're just going to see what the next advice is. All right, so we rolled today a 6. So our advice for today, or our roll for insight, is half of this is consistency. The other half is just surviving the cringe of it starting. Boy, do we know that feeling. So with that, I'll leave you to think about it. Make sure to, follow us. If you're on Spotify and you want to see this through video, make sure to visit our YouTube page. Make sure to visit our website. Subscribe to our mailing list, where we do a bunch of deals and giveaways and such on our Instagram, TikTok, etc. So make sure you follow us on all our social media, and give us a thought. Give us send us a comment on what you want to see, what you want to review in this show. Maybe what we made you think about, right? Are you that person or that business that's just starting and you're feeling that like cringy moment of, I want to do my art, or I want to sell my art, but who's going to like that anyway? Or I want to start my own 3D printing business, but everyone is doing it, so how do I set myself apart? We do it because we love it, and we do it because it's worth it. It's all about consistency. So send us a comment, drop a comment, send us a like, whatever you like. We're here, and we want to build this with you. Till next time, see you later.